Before we get started, there will be spoilers for the 1000-year Blood War arc of Bleach in the video to follow. Kisuke Urahara's Bankai was one of the most anticipated reveals of the entire series, having been hinted at and teased for years, while we waited with bated breath to see what it was going to be. And Kubo kept us waiting too, right up until chapter 664, but he delivered, finally pulling back the curtain on Kannonbiraki Benihime Aratame, at long last, showing the world what the humble shopkeeper was truly capable of. Happy New Year, everyone. It's the first video of 2024. I hope you guys had an amazing Christmas and a great time celebrating the new year. To kickstart the year, I wanted to do a video looking at one of, if not maybe, my favourite Bankai in the entire series, and really do a slightly deeper look into what makes this Bankai so terrifying, why I think it is so very strong. Like I said, this Bankai is one of my favourite in Bleach, and Benihime is just one of my favourite Zanpakuto in general, so needless to say I was ecstatic to finally see Kisuke's Bankai. But just how strong is it? Was it worth the seemingly endless wait? And did it live up to the immense hype that the community had built up for it? And how does the Bankai relate to Benihime itself? In today's video, we're going to take a closer look at Kannonbiraki Benihime Aratame, which was, unfortunately, only seen in action for a single chapter or so, meaning our time with it was criminally short. Still, I think there's plenty to be gleaned from its showing on the page, so let's dive in. First of all, what actually is Kisuke's Bankai? Remarkably, it's actually quite simple, and therein lies its genius. Upon its activation, a towering yet elegant-looking woman rises up behind Kisuke, looming over him, her long black hair trailing along the ground. And while the Bankai might appear to take the form of a beautiful woman on first glance, upon closer inspection, however, it's clear that we're actually coming face to face with a gigantic, what looks to be wooden doll, noticeable seams present on her joints and fingers. The doll seemingly depicts Benihime herself, garbed in a brilliant blood-red robe, her huge arms and skeletal hands outstretched on either side of Kisuke in a sort of protective embrace. Before we move on, I hope the anime gives Kisuke's Bankai a little more fanfare, a bit more room to breathe. It absolutely deserves it, and I always felt its appearance, while cool and a long time coming, was a little cramped in the original chapter. It kind of just appears out of nowhere. I hope instead we perhaps watch it construct itself in a really awesome, ominous fashion before taking on its more recognisable form. Something like that to give its appearance a little more build-up in the moment. Anyway, Kisuke's Bankai only has the one ability, but that power can be applied in a near-limitless capacity. Kannonbiraki Benihime Aratame restructures everything it touches, and despite its short panel time, we're privy to a few examples of how this actually works. Simply by being near Kisuke's Bankai when it is activated, Askin's arm is suddenly split open down the middle, right the way through to his thumb. However, this isn't a wound. Askin's arm is actually in the process of being remade, restructured by the Bankai's mysterious area of effect, but the sternritter is able to react fast enough, seemingly anyway, to escape its grasp. Interestingly, Benihime doesn't appear to actively touch him in that moment, and while I don't think Benihime has to touch the subject, as we'll see later on, sometimes it does seem to feel the need to, so I'm not entirely sure what the distinction is there. It seems to just be down to whatever Kisuke wants it to do. I wonder then if the anime might elaborate on this a little more to show maybe one of Benihime's stitches found its way to Askin's arm or something like that. Kisuke notes that his Bankai does indeed have a range, but I'll bring up this idea of range a bit later as it's an odd outlier to the rest of the Bankai itself, and I can't help but wonder if Kisuke is maybe being a little disingenuous here. The next time we see the Bankai's ability in action, however, is perhaps the clearest example. Kisuke's eyes have been totally destroyed by Askin at this point in the battle, quite literally killed by his gift ring's ability, the power to concentrate the death dealing on one specific part of his opponent's body, killing it outright. However, when Benihime rests her hands over Kisuke's face, she gets to work, her fingers whittling away at something in secret. The truth is quickly revealed as Benihime pulls back, revealing Kisuke's newly reconstructed eyes, stitches running down his face as threads are being pulled into place. It's not that Kisuke has brand new eyes, his old, seriously damaged ones have simply been remade to work once again. As Askin expresses disbelief at the fact, Kisuke simply reiterates that yes, his eyes were dead, but they've been restructured to work once again. As they continue to fight, Kisuke, still in range of his Bankai, lifts his arm, and we watch as both his hand and his forearm are briefly warped and split open much like Askin's was earlier, before being rapidly stitched back up again. And again, this is interesting. Here, Benihime doesn't seem to need to touch Kisuke at all, much like she wasn't touching Askin earlier at the start of this encounter. However, Kisuke's arm's physical strength has now been massively bolstered, and he is able to quickly overpower Askin in their clash, sending the sternritter flying towards the ground. And finally, we see that Kisuke's Bankai has created a pathway for Grimmjow to move along, enabling the Espada to enter Askin's inescapable Gift Ball Deluxe from the outside, and reappear right behind the sternritter in a flash, dealing the fatal finishing blow. This last one is interesting, as it looks to me at least like Kisuke's Bankai is capable of creating makeshift portals that essentially enable teleportation along a specific route. There's a very obvious opening in the floor behind Askin at the start of chapter 666, from which I assume Grimmjow popped out of, but here's where I want to bring up the point of range once again. Was Kisuke bluffing about his Bankai's range before? Did he simply release Askin from Benihime's grip purposefully to lower the sternritter's guard and lie to him that you managed to get out of its range? Because otherwise, I'm not entirely sure how this works. It's possible Kisuke used his Bankai back when he healed Grimmjow to set up the first entry point, but the issue with that is the Gift Ball Deluxe simply wasn't around yet at the time, so there was no entry point to make. When we see the path Kisuke has made, stitches are running along the cityscape itself, but when was this set up? If it was during this last battle, this very short, by the way, battle between Kisuke and Askin, then Benihime both works very fast and seemingly has no limit to its range at all. While Kisuke kept Askin busy, it's possible his Bankai was working to open a gateway in the gift ball, but I'm only guessing. It would have been interesting if we saw how Nell managed to reach them. Presumably they are in the centre of the Gift Ball Deluxe somewhere, and we see Nell heading towards what looks like a small opening held open by stitches, so it is created by Kisuke's Bankai. So presumably she's going to go through that opening, and maybe she'll just appear behind them like Grimmjow did and then get them out the same way. Again, I wish we'd seen it, and hopefully we will in the anime. But I mean, that's essentially everything we see the Bankai do. Like I said, its time is severely limited, and I hope the anime expands on their battle in some way. But even with a truncated showing, it's clear as day that Kannonbiraki Benihime Aratame is not only absurdly powerful, but is perhaps one of the strongest Bankai in the series, capable of virtually anything. It's in this way that I think it's perhaps the perfect Bankai for Kisuke, a man who plans for every single eventuality, but also one who spends his life pushing boundaries. His Bankai enables him to adapt on the fly in real time and change almost any variable involved in a fight, right down to the structure of his own body. That idea of experimentation is at the core of this Bankai, and thematically I think it's totally on point for the character. We see from this short sequence alone that Kisuke is capable of modifying his own body freely, restoring damaged body parts like his eyes, and enhancing others like his arm strength. So just what else is he capable of restructuring? Could Kisuke transform his legs to enable him to move at a speed even faster than Shunpo, or jump higher than any Shinigami can reach in the air? Could Kisuke restructure his skin to improve his defense, giving him a natural shield against sword strikes? Is he capable of altering his ears, his nose, or his eyes even further, heightening his senses beyond the normal? Can he have all of these modifications going at the same time? It seems likely to me that he can, seeing as he transforms his arm after fixing his eyesight. Plus, what more can Kisuke do with the body parts he's already restructured? Take his arm, for instance. Just how strong did it become in that moment? We've got no real way of knowing. With his newly enhanced arm, he basically just swats Askin out of the sky when the two of them were fairly even matched initially, but could he push himself even further? Could he modify his muscles even more? Is there a limit to how powerful he can actually become? Akin to, say, how Gremmy wasn't able to fully imagine Zaraki's power. And presumably Kisuke's alterations are mostly surface level, though saying that he does clearly alter his muscles in his arm, but I'm assuming he can't change his insides in any way, as he's still clearly being affected by the gift ball's poison throughout the fight, though I assume he can and maybe even does reconfigure his body on the go to enable him to keep standing and keep fighting despite the toxin. But I think if he could restructure his insides, maybe he would have altered himself fast enough to the point where he could have withstood the incredibly heightened poison at the end of the battle. Instead, we see him collapsing in a heap as he violently coughs up blood, which tells me there was nothing he could do. There are so many questions, and these only pertain to the man himself. We've already seen the Bankai is capable of going vastly beyond just the scope of Kisuke alone. Although it's only brief, we see that Kisuke is able to alter his opponent's bodies as well, presumably at his own behest. I don't think Askin's arm just opened itself up because he was near Benihime. Presumably that was something Kisuke wanted it to do, but again, it's kind of hard to say, but he does so near instantaneously as well. In fact, that's a point that also needs to be reiterated here. All of these modifications seem to take mere seconds at best to complete. It's possible the time taken to restructure depends on what work needs doing, but even completely restoring Kisuke's eyes from a totally dead state to working perfectly only takes a few seconds at most. But just how far can Benihime manipulate her enemy's body? Could Kisuke have restructured Askin's own eyes to blind him? And how would that even work? Would Benihime need to be able to grab and hold the sternritter in place long enough to get her hands on his face? Could Kisuke restructure Askin's arm and make it incredibly physically weak? In that sense, his Bankai is a little like Ichibe's Ichimonji, a comparison I don't make lightly, but one I'm sure he'd be happy to have. Except where Ichibe removes names and therefore power, Kisuke takes a more literal, hands-on approach to changing his opponent's physical makeup. Not only that, but we see the Bankai is capable of working on inanimate objects too, completely expanding its scope beyond what we already thought it was capable of doing. Kisuke uses his Bankai to alter totally foreign entities, as we see when it works on Askin's Gift Ball Deluxe, as well as the buildings of Varvelt. If Kisuke really is able to manifest portals, then it's feasible he could go wherever he likes and bypass any defense. Like I said, the logistics of how his Bankai managed that are a little iffy at best, but still, the idea is there. Now, one word I've found myself using over and over throughout this video is capable, and I think that's quite fitting, because that's what makes Kisuke's Bankai so unbelievably powerful: its capability. The fact that it can do virtually anything, or so it seems. I've said it before that the simplest powers are often the strongest in Bleach, acting as a nexus for a litany of other branching skills and uses, and that's exactly what you've got here. On the surface, Kannonbiraki Benihime Aratame only has one power: the power to restructure. But that power can be used in such a colourful kaleidoscope of ways that it blows the doors wide open and in turn makes it so that this Bankai is easily one of the most versatile and dangerous in Bleach. To dive a little deeper into how absurdly powerful this Bankai really is, let's take a brief look at how Kisuke might have incorporated it in battle against the other Schutzstaffel members. What's key with this Bankai is that it, in some ways, exemplifies Kisuke's mantra as a character, this idea that he can just do things because that's who he is. For example, against Pernida Pankajaz, presumably Kisuke could use his Bankai to restructure his body in such a way that it would be able to repel Pernida's nerves. I mean, where are the limits? Kisuke's Bankai is like the idea of him having an answer for everything manifested. Can Kisuke adapt his body on the fly in such a way that Pernida's nerves would no longer be able to penetrate his skin or his muscles, making them completely useless? Could Kisuke use his Bankai to restructure Pernida itself? It's a pretty big target, making it unable to fire nerves from its fingers anymore. If Kisuke dissects Pernida, splitting it open as opposed to actually cutting it in the way of an injury, would it still be able to evolve? Against Leal, could Kisuke restructure his body every time he shot and fix himself up so that nothing happened? Could he make it so his body is strong enough to block even the unblockable X-axis? Or more likely, could his Bankai restructure Leal's own gun, making it impossible to fire? Would Kisuke's stitches be able to affect Leal in his Volsten dish where he's only made of light? Considering the effects of Kyoraku's Bankai do work on him, I imagine Kisuke's Bankai would be able to pick him apart and open him up freely, since it doesn't seem to be akin to a physical strike. And then against Gerard, would Kisuke be capable of restructuring the Titan's chest, opening it up to reveal the core inside? As always, this is totally speculative and just for fun. Maybe his Bankai wouldn't be capable of any of this, but the fact we can even pose the question is a testament to the potential depth of this power. Of course, what makes a Bankai powerful varies between Shinigami. Kenpachi Zaraki's unnamed Bankai is all about extraordinary physical prowess, both incredible feats of speed and strength, while Kyoraku's Bankai leads his opponent down a dangerous path towards inevitable death. In my opinion, Kisuke's Bankai is absolutely up there, unequivocally, as one of the most powerful in the entire series because its possibilities are limitless. I really do love this Bankai. In actuality, I do think it is one of my favourites, not only because I love the juxtaposition of simplicity and complexity on show here, but because it suits Kisuke so completely perfectly. Benihime herself is a wonderful design, and her looming manifestation feels also very nostalgic at the same time, reminiscent of some of Bleach's earliest Bankai that all saw giant physical constructs of sorts. I also love how Mayuri's Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo, while not technically related at all, is like a twisted, bastardized version of Benihime here, a monstrosity potentially inspired by the beauty of Kisuke's own Bankai. Plus, the stitches are such a cool aesthetic addition. I kind of wish they stayed on Kisuke forever more, to be honest, to add a little extra weight to him choosing to use Bankai, but alas. The theme behind Benihime was always quite nebulous. Despite it being a really awesome Zanpakuto, it kind of just seemed like it could do whatever Kisuke needed it to do at the time, whether that was generate a shield, or some netting, or some bombs, or simply unleash a piercing crimson arc of energy. But seeing Kisuke's Bankai actually helped put it all into perspective a little more for me. The underlying theme of Benihime as a Zanpakuto is creation and destruction. Benihime's Shikai can both create and destroy, and the same is true of Kannonbiraki Benihime Aratame, but on a much bigger and faster scale. We really do need to see more of this Bankai when the anime gets round to this fight, most likely in Core 4. A Bankai that is able to toy with people and reality itself as though they were playthings, as though they were unwitting subjects in Kisuke's experiments, sounds pretty incredible to me, and that's why I think this is easily one of the strongest Bankai in Bleach. But that's it for the video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. As always, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on Kisuke's Bankai. Do you think I'm right with this? Is it easily one of the strongest in the series? And if it is, which Bankai do you think maybe outclass it? Which would you say are stronger overall? What else can Kisuke's Bankai do? Did I miss anything here? Is there anything else you think that the Bankai is capable of? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, I want to end this video by saying a massive thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. I really do appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Your support does mean the absolute world to me as we move now into 2024. As always, if you like what I do here on the channel, you can also support me over on Patreon to get your name in the credits just like this, and to get every single video I release completely ad-free. Alright guys, but that's it from me. Once again, Happy New Year, and until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.